we're parted by geography again.
In
Is that the right
heat.
word? And heat, yeah. It's cold here today, actually, which is weird.
My AC's not working.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. That's awful.
It's
That's really
very
terrible.
it's actually not terrible today because we did have a little bit of a cold front. So my house has managed to stay under 80 degrees today. But yesterday,
Yikes.
this very uncomfortable. I refused to move from out of in front of my fan.
I don't blame you. I left my husband to making all the dinner so I could come record with you. I was like, here's the asparagus, here's the pasta. Goodbye. So I just wanted to let you know I'm here for
Thank
you.
you. That's amazing. I'm not having dinner till after we record either because I was like, I gotta get ready.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for putting off your meal. What you reading?
I'm reading your book. I had to
I'm gonna
stop all
hide
other
now.
reading to read your book because I was like, I need to read this. I don't want to keep you waiting. I'm gonna pause all other reading.
I saw a term the other day. It was alpha reader, and I was like, maybe you're my alpha reader and not my beta reader. You know? I know, right? Doesn't that make you feel important?
It
I'm really
does.
nervous for you to read it. Very nervous, but also I'm excited that you're the first person reading it because I feel like of everybody I know, you have the best eye for it, I think. And I think that you will give me constructive slash kind criticism. So I'm excited.
A criticism will definitely be constructive slash kind. But I told you I'm enjoying it. I got sucked in. So I had to tell myself to stop so I could focus on our podcast and do what I was supposed to do. I was
That
like,
makes
wait
me
a
so
minute,
happy.
it's 4 o'clock. I have to do things.
That makes me so happy to hear though, honestly, because like it's funny because like reading it myself, there is a point. You're actually not there yet. So I'm really glad that you're already getting invested, but there's a point where when I'm editing where I forget that I'm editing and I just start reading like this and I go, "Oh shoot, I'm supposed to be line editing," you know. So, I'm excited after chapter 15, you know. It should Oh, can't wait.
Okay, well, I'm only like 9 chapters away from that. So
So excited. That's
we'll
so
see if I
weird.
sleep
Well,
tonight.
she's gonna like binge my book. You might. You might. It does really pick up and like
You might.
go.
Also, I will say though, I did take your book as like, and I saw the page count, and I was like, challenge accepted. I can sit and do this real fast. Because I think our book club, we keep saying like we're tired of giving ourselves 400-page books because that starts to feel a little more like a chore when you're reading
Oh
400
yeah.
pages. Even when you enjoy it, you're like, let's get through it. And so I saw the page number and I was like, I can do this real
Yeah, well,
fast.
it's only like 74,000 words, and I think like Emily Henry averages around 99,000. So, I mean, it's in the range for the genre. So, I'm curious if it
No,
needs
I
more.
think I was like, I'll let you know. But I saw it and I was like, yes. Like I can sit and knock this out. Like I can read it and I'm going to be entertained. And that's exciting. And that's kind of what I want at this moment. I don't want to.
I'm yeah, we'll check back in. Entertained is not a word I would use to describe my book. Interesting.
Well, I'm not
I
far into it yet, but I figured it would be. Listen,
trauma,
my
trauma.
definition of entertainment may be different than other people's definition of entertainment, right? You just went and saw a blockbuster film, and that's some people's forms of entertainment. I find Pride and Prejudice very entertaining, but some people would arguably say it's boring.
I mean, true, true. That's very true. I just started watching, side note, because I feel like it's important, because we did a whole Jane Austen episode. I am making my kids watch the Colin Firth miniseries, and we just watched the first episode the other day, and I forgot how like freaking detailed that miniseries is. Like they took the book and they were like, we're gonna do everything. And
Literally word for word.
literally word for word. So anyways, I'll, report back when we get finished. Yeah, I'm so excited that you're reading it. Thank you so much for being my beta slash alpha reader or whatever you are, my amazing dear friend. I'm excited about it. I am reading Remarkably Bred Creatures. I'm trying. I really am trying, y'all. It's just not my kind of book. Like, because when I tell you what else I'm reading, you're gonna go, of course that's not her kind of book. I I fell down a rabbit hole the other day and I was like, I need more books where there's more than one person. I really enjoyed a book that I read. I think I talked about it on here. It was very spicy, But I also like there's a book in the Neon God series it was Helen and Achilles and Patroclus, which I really enjoyed. This seems to be something I enjoy. If my mom's listening, cover your ears. So I found a book called Double Pucked, which I'm reading, which is hilarious. Double Pucked. That's all you need to know.
I don't
It
need
was
more.
it was recommended. I'll let you know if it's any good. And then y'all, I read Lights Out, and y'all are dirty. I read Lights Out, y'all. This book, I have questions. And now my algorithm on Instagram like heard me talking about it and was like, "We're going to start showing you some of these videos like she watches in the book." And I'm like, "No, I have children." I can't. It's very weird. So I'm not going to continue the series because there was a lot in that book that was incredibly triggering for me personally that I didn't read the trigger warning. I actually saw a reel today that was like when you read a trigger warning and you're like, I'm still going to read it. I don't remember seeing one. I'm sure there was one, but there were a couple things in there that just hit a little too close to home and it was difficult to read. But I did enjoy the rest of it and I really enjoyed the writing. Her writing is very witty. Yeah, she's a really good writer. So anyways, but y'all, I have questions about the population. Apparently, we all just want a masked man to stalk us. That's what we're all wanting. I had no idea.
Again, the pipeline from Twilight to that seems real.
It really is. It really is. So,
If his mask had sequins.
oh my God. But that's ACOTAR. That's ACOTAR. Tamlin with the mask.
See, it's all connected. One day, my background will just be red string and a board. String theory at its finest.
She has all the books connected. Like, I love that.
This is the starting point for you, your pipeline, which I think actually, whole segueing into our topic today is perfect because we can talk about probably where many millennial people got the start for love of literature.
Oh my gosh.
And then got to ACOTAR and Lights Out.
And somehow it degraded to men stalking you with masks on and then you watching the videos on your Instagram even though you said you wouldn't.
In all
they keep
fairness,
popping up. They're so good.
Was there not a Phantom of the Opera episode? Am I imagining this? I have to go look now.
There is. It's listed as one of my favorites because it was my favorite.
Look, men in masks started at a young age.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Oh, we would love for you to comment. No, if you're as weird as we are. And speaking of commenting in TBRs, I wanted to mention we didn't have anything listed in our scripts about talking about our TBRs because our TBRs are out of control. I know that mine is.
We got too ambitious with the TBRs, and I have like literally a book. Right now, I'm on a strict reading schedule that averages like I have to finish a book every 3 to 4 days. It feels like to keep.
Me too. I went to Half Price Books when I was in town, which we don't have where I live, and I may have bought too many books. It's all bad. Anyways, I wanted to let everyone know that we do have a Patreon level now that you can join where you can actually submit to recommend things for our TBR. And if you submit it, we will give you a shout out on the podcast. And how you do that is you join, obviously, as a member, and then I will post once a month asking for submissions. And I would say like this was also really good for those indie authors out there who would like to get a little bit more eyes on their books. So go check it out. We'll have the link in the show notes. And now Catherine is going to tell us what we're going to talk about today because I'm so excited.
I am very excited for today's topic. It's definitely been on our list since we talked about this podcast. So today we are going to talk all things Wishbone because it feels really appropriate.
Yeah, and because the documentary just came out, so that's really what led into this is the documentary. But yeah, so appropriate now that I think about it.
No, it's so for multiple reasons. I, in all fairness, watched the documentary today because I finally like got myself to do it and write our script, and I was so excited. Like that was an ambitious project.
So ambitious.
Incredibly ambitious. And I kind of love that we're going to spend, a podcast dedicated to Wishbone because I do think when we talk about it more, Wishbone was definitely my first introduction to a lot of classic literature besides Disney, who was taking very different takes on a lot of classic literature at the time.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I think about it. So I would have been a little bit older than you when I started
Mhm.
watching Wishbone, but I think I was like what, middle school?
Yeah.
And I still came home every day and watched it. Like it was so profoundly impactful on me. And I think you're
Right.
absolutely right because when we think about Disney and how they changed everything, you know, I
Mhm.
think about my favorite movies back then. Wishbone didn't do that, which we're going to get into, which is so
Yeah.
fascinating.
So, for our listeners who don't know, and if you do know, I hope you're squealing in delight and having a wave of nostalgia hit you because Wishbone was an American live action children's television series that aired from 1995 to 1997, and it was originally broadcast on PBS. It was about a Jack Russell Terrier dog named Wishbone who daydreams about being the lead character of stories from classic literature. The show was produced by Big Feats Entertainment, who also produced Barney and Friends for PBS. And what was unique about Wishbone, though, as opposed to Barney and a lot of other children's programming happening at this time on PBS, was Wishbone was very much targeted towards an older audience. So, like 6 to 11 was the ideal age range they were looking for.
Mhm.
So I was about 6 years old when Wishbone came out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, that's right.
That's
Hmm.
yeah, that's about when I started watching it, 5, 6. So, the adapted stories were notable for staying faithful to the source material, not toning down their subject matter like murder, execution, suicide, and the effects of slavery. So, they were talking some really hard subject matter in a really appropriate way, which we'll talk about, I think, more as we talk about the documentary, which is all about
Yeah.
behind the scenes. And even though the series was meant for children, thousands of letters were received from college students and parents saying how much they enjoyed the show as well. And I know my love of Wishbone was also shared by my mom and even my granny, because for Wishbone was hot for a really like short period of
It
time. It was
really
very
was.
popular.
Yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
being at her house in the summer and she took me to Dairy Queen like 4 times that week, which would have been so weird. She never would do that. But they had Wishbone toys in their kids' meals. And so I got like little
Yes.
Wishbone figurines back when like, kid meal toys were really cool. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I mean, the other thing that about this show that is so, so cool and I think makes it even more like special to us is that it was filmed near Denton, Texas, which is kind of in the Dallas Fort Worth area where we are from. And so it also felt very special because it felt like we were a part of it in a way, you know what I mean? Like it was down the road, was where they were filming it, you know? So
felt
cool.
really special. Barney was also produced right here in North
It
Texas, which
was.
I
Yeah.
like in our little ambitious listener section. I'll tell a funny story about Barney and the connection to PBS and a teacher I had. Anyway, we won't talk about it here. Um, but it was I think it was really interesting out watching the documentary, just seeing the sets. It looked like the neighborhood my first home was in a little bit. Not quite the same.
Yeah.
Like obviously it was spaced out differently, but the trees and the style of
Mhm.
home, I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
that looks like that East Side neighborhood that my first home was in. And I think that also made it really special to me because it felt like I could really put myself in those stories too.
Yeah, one thing they didn't talk about a lot in the documentary. So the documentary is called What's the Story Wishbone? And if you want to watch it, you can check your PBS station, see if they're going to air it, but it's also on Apple TV to rent or buy. One of the things they didn't talk about in the documentary that I felt was so impactful, especially for me, was that Joe, the main kid character, his mom was a single mom. And then we also had Samantha, his friend, whose parents were going through a divorce. And I just felt like for the time, it was something we didn't see a lot of representation on TV with in movies, anything. And so I remember like I would watch it and I would see myself,
Mhm.
in Joe and his mom and their struggles. And they would talk about it. I mean, they would talk about missing his dad and what life was like when dad was there versus when dad wasn't there. And so I just like
Mm.
this show, like beyond the fact that they cover literature, which we're going to talk more about, it really was just impactful for how they portrayed kids and their lives. And I think that that made it so special.
Right. No, I think that was a big part of the show. So, kind of the premise of the show, and we'll go into that to talk about it, was the standard episode of Wishbone consisted of like an opening scene, which was always introducing the contemporary plot. So that was focusing on Joe, who is Wishbone's owner, who was a middle school boy. Is that correct? Middle school
Yeah.
age?
Yep.
And his friends, and they were having some sort of situation in his hometown And then the situation where would remind Wishbone of a work of classic literature, and then
Mhm.
he would imagine himself in that story. And so you were getting this classic literature story in conjunction with a contemporary story that was happening, and those two storylines kind of overlapped, and there was a parallel drawn between them. And so usually Wishbone was always the main character in the literature, but not always, because we have Joan of Arc and she was the main character, and so he's like a
Yeah.
secondary
He was her
main male
friend.
character. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in Phantom of the Opera, he played Raoul, not the Phantom.
Right. Right.
Yep. So
And
he
well, and he
wasn't
doesn't play
always.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's not Dr.
No,
Jekyll. So
no.
he's not always the main character, but he is maybe the main narrator most of the time.
Exactly. Exactly. Y'all, we're talking about a dog.
A
So
dog.
a dog in full costume, and he interacts with the story as a character. So when the actors are acting, they're acting with the dog. And I think this is very important if you are listening to this and you have not seen it, to understand this is not like a cartoon. This was live
No.
action.
Yeah.
This was a dog that was trained and he did all the stunts. It's insane. So go watch the documentary because they go through a lot of that in detail. And I was blown away by the behind the scenes of this dog. Is incredible. He worked harder than and longer than any of the actors on set because he was in both the modern story and the literature story. So when you think about
Right.
it, he probably logged more set time than anybody. A dog. A dog.
He definitely did. I also thought it was interesting in the documentary how they talked about how he was so professional. Like Wishbone kind of set the
Yeah.
tone for the rest of the actors, because like he would come to work and they came to work and they were working on under an incredible timeline, which we'll talk about. But also, if you just want to watch an episode of Wishbone, all of them are available on YouTube. Or there's also another website which we can drop in our show notes that also allows you to download and watch them. But they're available for free. And so the last 2 minutes of nearly every episode had a behind the scenes featurette where they would talk, like titled Tail Ends, and they would talk about kind of the production and development of the episode. I can remember those 2 minutes on some of these episodes
Yes.
better than I can remember the episode itself, because I think that might have been where I started to really develop a love for production.
Yeah.
And like that's where I first got introduced to it. And it's so amazing because they were doing such incredible work.
They
And
were.
his little costumes, like his full-blown little Renaissance costumes, are the fact, like everything, every detail was so beautifully thought out in the show
It
and really
was. They
helped immerse you in those stories with Wishbone.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot in the documentary, and I have to say I was blown away by watching them put together these episodes, and also like given the fact that they were literally producing an episode each week. And so they would go from like, an episode set in Victorian England to an episode set in like the time of Ivanhoe, or they
Yeah.
even did one that was African folk tales.
Mhm.
So they were having to like create sets and costumes, makeup, all of that in less, literally over the weekend from when
Yeah.
they finished filming Friday to starting on Monday. And it was just incredible. But yeah, his little costumes, she talks about in the documentary how they had to be one piece and they had
Mhm.
to be able to get on and off easy. And he had all these hats that he wore, and they had to design the hats so they wouldn't fall off when he jumped or ran, but you couldn't see a string or anything. It was,
Right.
I mean, masterful. There was some masterful stuff happening on the show.
It was incredibly masterful. And the whole point of the show was for literary education. So each episode just brilliantly summarized major plots of classic books like Don Quixote or Romeo and Juliet, Frankenstein, which my
Yes.
daughter just covered this year as a sophomore in high school.
Yeah.
Right? So like books that were way older in subject matter maybe than for 6 to 11-year-olds, but they really were finding a way to adapt those stories into a
I
very
mean,
palatable way, but also respecting children's intelligence, like not shying away
yes.
from the hard subject matter. They're like, we're going to talk about it, and you're still going to be super entertained by this cute little dog who has the face of an angel. The dog was precious.
I mean, they did Red Badge of Courage, Joan of
Yeah,
Arc. Joan of Arc burns at the stake, y'all,
they
at the
showed it.
end of
Like,
they showed it. Yeah, I mean, and Phantom of the Opera. They did Phantom of the
Mhm.
Opera and they show Eric's face. I mean, yeah, it just when I think about it, it's so funny because at the time I was watching it and I never questioned it.
No.
I was just like, this is what it is. It's great. Never questioned it. And And it never, like, I wouldn't say any of it traumatized me. It only made me want to read these books and read more, you know?
Right. Right. I would agree. None of it was traumatizing. In fact, it just made me interested because my grandparents, when I go spend the summer with them, had a lot of the like Reader Digest versions of these
Oh,
stories, and I would
yes.
read
Yeah.
them then in the summer when I was there. So, like, I remember Sherlock Holmes being one of the episodes, and
Yep.
it got me into Sherlock Holmes. I loved Shakespeare as a second grader, and I swear it's because
Yeah.
of Wishbone.
Me
Not
too.
because of like any other reason than I was weirdly obsessed with Shakespeare as a second grader.
Me
And I
yeah,
think it,
well, I
yeah, it
wasn't
was definitely
obviously, I wasn't
Wishbone.
a second grader, but I same. I have always loved Shakespeare, and I swear it started with their Romeo and Juliet episode.
Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah.
absolutely. So 50 episodes were produced. The first 40 episodes were shown in a single season run in 1995, which in the documentary they talk about, they got the opportunity to kind of like pilot 5. And then PBS came back and said, great, we want 35 and we need them immediately. And we need all of them at
Yeah.
once. So we can do we want to show a Wishbone episode a day, basically, in a season. And that was
Same.
wild. And then they did 10 remaining episodes that became the second season from 1997 to 1998. One of them was like a made for TV movie. So it was a little bit.
Yeah. It was interesting because I don't I've seen it, but I don't remember how I watched it
Mm,
because what did
Same,
it didn't
because it
they
was
say,
like,
like,
it was on
Showtime
Showtime.
produced
Yeah.
it?
So it was at the
Yeah.
start of like cable. And I think I
Yeah.
must have watched it later and or rented it from Blockbuster. It's the only two ways I could think
Mm.
of
Blockbuster
potentially of how
again.
I watched it.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I do like when I was watching the documentary, I remember seeing the scenes, like it looked familiar. So I know I saw it, but yeah, I'm not sure how. So interesting.
Right. So critical acclaim for the show. It won 4 Daytime Emmy Awards and had a prestigious Peabody Award for its high production quality and engaging scripts. And then just unfortunately, some of the challenges in the end of the series was despite all the critical acclaim and popular success, they went on a nationwide tour, taking that little dog and his voice actor everywhere so kids could interact with Wishbone. It was just very difficult and expensive. And the requirement and the detail they were putting in the show, they made it a cinema-like show. It wasn't like a sitcom set or like,
And they recorded
Sesame
with film.
Street. Yeah, they recorded with film,
Yeah.
like they had full set designs, again, these costumes that were like period accurate with even fabrics.
Yes.
Nothing,
Yes.
like no corners were cut, and the ambitious adaptation of a classic literature novel and having to turn a script over a week.
Yeah. They
um
did Pride and Prejudice, you guys. They did. They
they
did.
did Northanger Abbey too. It was like
They
one
did
of their last
Northanger Abbey,
last
y'all.
episodes, and I was like
It's
reading the
insane.
synopsis of it and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this episode. I just forgot that it was like Northanger Abbey they did.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they did Call of the Wild, I believe, too, is what I was reading. Like all of them,
Yeah.
as I was reading through the synopsis, I was like, I clearly can picture this episode.
I mean, they
Um,
did Robin Hood, but then they also did Ivanhoe. Like,
Mhm.
it's just so fun. And Tale of Two Cities, you guys. They did a
Yeah,
Tale of Two Cities. Do you understand that book is literally about a guy sacrificing himself to the guillotine in France to save his friends
yes.
for
They did
kids?
Henry VIII too, which I was like, wow.
Oh, I don't remember that one. You know, it was you put on here like about the writers, and I want to talk about the writers for a second before we
Hmm.
get too far into like our favorite episodes and stuff, because I think that it's really, really important because as I was watching the documentary, I literally had a freak out because I did not know that Mo Rocca was a writer for Wishbone. In fact, that was his first big writing job. And they
Mhm.
actually show so Mo Rocca went on to be on The Daily Show and he went on to have his own show and all these things, but he did an interview on Larry King and Larry says to him, "It wasn't your first gig, The Daily Show." And he's like, "Actually, I wrote for this show called Wishbone." And he starts describing it. And it was just so great. I had no idea that he wrote for that show. And they have all these crazy photos of him on set back when he's super young. Because the writer who was hired to write for Wishbone, she was literally like her mom knew the guy. And he was like, "Do you have a writer?" She's like, "I know somebody." She comes from New York and writes those first 5 episodes. And then when they order the rest, she goes, "Let me call my friends from college. I need some backup." And one of them
Yeah.
happened to be Mo Rocca. That is an insane story right there.
The whole show is actually kind of an insane story. So we'll talk about it when we talk a little bit more about the documentary and our feedback. But ultimately, PBS halted the production because the show lacked massive merchandising potential, which like I would love to talk about that one. Really, what was happening was product placement in shows. And it was very expensive to
Oh,
place a product in a show. They didn't have
yeah.
the budget for that and to produce an episode. Each episode cost roughly $500,000 to produce.
Whew, that is a lot.
It is a lot of money, especially we're talking 1995, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
producing 40 episodes per season. That's
It's
a big
nuts.
big ticket. And then I think also what was a struggle is they wanted to make it a weekly show just
Yeah.
so they had more time. And as the way blocking works in television, because we were just talking before we started recording that I used to work in TV and I did news. And like the way blocking and traffic works is the children's hour is set and they are like literally trying to just fill those 30-minute slots.
Yeah.
And so like a weekly wouldn't work, it would throw off the whole schedule. And so they wanted that daily production, which was
What they couldn't
just
do
so
it.
difficult. Yeah, it just became, unfortunately, it was a beautiful concept. Everyone loved it. The realities of how television was changing and what television was at that time and how much it was costing to do the work, it just didn't make it a tenable situation to keep going. So, which I think broke everyone's heart. Like, I got really teary in the documentary when they started talking about the
Me
loss of it.
too.
And I
Me
understand,
too.
like, you just wish, like, people would make it work no matter what.
I
Um,
know.
but also, like, there were higher powers that be. I was like, dang capitalism, product placement killed it.
I know, absolutely. I cried too at the end of the documentary because it's such a like moment in time for me. It's such a huge piece of my
It's
childhood.
funny
Like
because it's literally only 2 years, but it was so impactful.
it it felt so much more than 2 years. And to hear them talk about that was all they did. I was like, wait a minute, I thought y'all were around for like 10
But
years. Like
I should have checked this. I swear they kept showing episodes because I
they
watched
did,
several of the,
yes.
yeah, I think the episodes kept playing. They just didn't
They did
create any
reruns.
more. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, cause and I don't remember if it was on every day, like, I'm trying to think, but I remember it was on in the afternoon because I would come home from school and watch it in the
yeah.
afternoon,
Yeah,
so
there was
I
like the block of Wishbone, and then it
yeah,
went to like Bill Nye the Science Guy, and
yep,
then I think it was like the Kratz brothers. And so like I
yes.
was a PBS kid. I knew for like an
Kratz
hour and a
before they were
half.
animated, yeah.
Yes, I like knew for an hour and a half I was gonna be we're gonna dive into world literature, we're gonna have a science class, and we're gonna have like an ecology class. So it was gonna be great.
I miss those days, those were
I
such
miss
good
those days
days.
too.
I know. I
I
mean,
know.
now, like, it's weird because we don't watch local TV. And so but my kid, she uses the PBS Kids app, but it's all animated.
It is
It's
all
all
animated.
animated.
Mhm.
She loves Pinkalicious, but it's all animated. And I think what's missing is what was so special about the show is that it was live action. It felt like watching a movie. And they talk
Yeah.
about that a lot in the documentary, how that's how they wanted it to feel.
Right. It was like watching a film. Again, the subject matter, looking back and watching the documentary, just the respect for intelligence of children. Just I don't think we
Yeah.
have that anymore.
No.
I don't think there's shows on now that respect children's intelligence. It's more about like how can we grab your attention and keep you entertained for 30 minutes as
Entertainment.
opposed to like
Yeah.
also doing hard learning lessons. Are talking about differences of others really well. The only show I could think of, which was ironically another dog, where I feel like sometimes hard subject matter is touched upon in kid appropriate ways to have good family conversation, is Bluey.
Yeah,
That is like the only
yeah.
one I could kind of like make a little bit of a parallel currently as I know children's television. My kids are older, we're teenagers now. We watch everything else but small, like that 6 to 11 programming.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about Bluey. And I think what Bluey does that Wishbone did is the parents are involved in the conversation, the adults in the show.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's one thing I love about Bluey is we get to watch the adults and how they grow while they're parenting and how the people around them, like how they interact with the people around them in their lives. And Wishbone did the same thing because Wishbone had adults in the
Mhm.
contemporary story part of it who were navigating things just as much as the kids were, or trying to help the kids navigate a situation. And so, yeah, I love that you brought that comparison because I really do think there's a similar vibe there. I did want to say one thing that too that I think was so impactful about the show is kids being exposed to theater and
Yes.
actual, like, profound
Yes.
acting, and they talk about in the documentary how for the so whenever Wishbone would go into the story, and they would have a whole separate set of actors who acted in the literature portion of the episode, and they were company actors. So they basically hired a group of actors to be the Wishbone company, and what was cool about it is they talk about it on the show because I was taking ballet in the Dallas-Fort Worth area during this time, and there really was this, like, vibe of, like, a renaissance of theater and ballet and music was happening in the DFW area at the time, and they farmed all of those actors from stages. They were stage actors from the DFW area. So when they act in the show, you're getting, like, a theatrical representation of this piece of literature. So, like, when they did Romeo and Juliet, they did freaking Romeo and Juliet. Like, when they
Yeah.
did Frankenstein, it was the acting was chef's kiss. I cannot tell you how incredible this group of
Yeah.
actors was on this show. And in the documentary, they talk about how incredible the experience was because they really got to use their acting chops in so many different ways. I mean, they're producing an episode a week. So they're literally jumping into a new story every week. It's kind of incredible when you think about it.
It was incredible, and also, even, like, the way the characters and costuming did such a good job of transforming those actors every week, that sometimes you didn't
Yes.
even realize, like, Joan of Arc, who you watched Joan of Arc be this amazing, strong woman, was also Juliet and Romeo and
Right.
Juliet, like, because they costumed them so well and did such a good job, and the actors did such a good job of taking on their characters, like, you were just bought in. And also, this tiny little dog also was buying in, like, had the
Yeah.
emotional range, and the voice actor they got was really good, and, like, also, it felt very seamless. He felt very much one of the cast. You were buying into the story being told.
Yeah.
So
There's a really great moment in the documentary where they're shooting that final movie, and it was a Western because the
Mhm.
guy who created the show had been reading a lot of Westerns, and he's like, I want to do a Western. And they're interviewing the actor in the documentary, and he talks about how they're doing a stunt. Like, they're supposed to run to a point, him and the dog, and they're supposed to pause and shoot at the bad guys. And they were running, and the dog went in a different direction. And so, in the moment, he literally does a forward tumble onto the sidewalk of the raised sidewalk of the buildings, like in the old Westerns, and shoots. And it's such an iconic moment in the show. And, like, I remember it. Like, I remembered seeing that. And so I just loved hearing him talk about, like, how they worked with the dog and how they'd have to, like, they had to
Yeah.
act. They had to really be in the
Yeah.
moment. So,
No, I think, again, Wishbone was absolutely incredible. Definitely the beginning of my love for literature and all things. I carry the stories. I've made my kids watch episodes of Wishbone on YouTube, and I found out we could watch it. I was like,
yeah.
yes, we're gonna watch Wishbone.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna pull some out, especially, like, it's so funny because you can literally, like, I can look at what we're reading in homeschool and find a Wishbone episode. So, and then today my 5-year-old asked me, she said, "Can we watch Wishbone when we get home?" So I do need to find it on the YouTube, and we'll also find a link for all of
Yes.
you for sure.
Um, for sure. And so I think please go watch the documentary if you're a Wishbone fan and or just curious, because I just watched the documentary and I think it's amazing of this show was such a kismet situation, like the perfect example of kismet, of like kind of fate
Yeah.
happening, where the creator was really thinking, he's like, I want to tell a story from a dog's perspective, and just happened to have like a book of literature. And he was like, we're going to imagine this dog, imagining himself in stories. And then they got just like the perfect cast kind of fell in their lap with them doing all the casting here in DFW. They had the right casting director who brought in great ideas about having the company, and
Yeah.
also like how to source the contemporary cast. It was
Yeah,
just
and
true,
it
and
should
like
be.
Mo Rocca bringing
I
on, and
know.
like this
Well,
amazing group of writers who were doing the hardest job
and
that
it
I
was, like,
cannot
their first
imagine.
job. Yeah, and I think that's, like, one
Yeah.
thing I wanna highlight too is, like, when you watch the documentary, they talk about how almost everybody who worked on the show, this was, like, one of their first jobs.
Yeah, for a lot
And
of the directors and like film,
it's
a
crazy.
lot of the cinematographers and stuff, it was their first job. They had maybe been PAs on bigger shows, but or
Yep.
like bigger movies, but had never been in charge like this.
That's so crazy.
The set, like the fact of how quickly they were turning around sets, right? And again, they're building like full blown Hollywood sets in a pasture here in North
Yeah.
Texas.
They bought
And
land in North Texas. They built the town that they use in all the
and
episodes.
built
But
two
then
sound stages, which was incredible
that's
too.
crazy. I know. And then they would build and they would do them with foam. They would, and they had to be, you know, they had to be accurate. And like there was one part where he was talking about, I think it was one of the Dickens stories they did, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
Victorian England. And so he was talking about how, we have to have the buildings accurate so you actually feel like you're there. And in England, there are buildings from different time periods. And he's talking about how they built these buildings from all time periods that are in London. It is insane. I was so impressed because I think as a kid, I don't know that I quite recognized the work that was going into it. So I really love that the documentary highlighted all the people who worked behind the scenes. It was incredible.
Yeah, not even that. Like the visual effect supervisor that they brought in
Yeah.
had worked with George Lucas at
Yes.
ILM, and she was in charge of doing that. And she had a lot of people who didn't like. She talks about how the art department would come to her and they're like, "Well, we need this," and they didn't know the language to use. And she's like, "Oh, okay, I see what we need to do here," and then managed to do that.
It's
Which
crazy.
was also like, what a fun Pixar connection because Pixar created the like software that George Lucas used at
Yes.
ILM. And like I was like, oh,
Yep.
so fun. And so like I think and the fact they were like, oh, we would design a set basically in an hour and a half and then turn it over to our carpenters who had to get it over like done by the end of the day.
It's insane.
It is insane. It's just incredible what they were doing. And then they were only shooting for 4 days, like maybe four
Yeah.
days max of shooting. And you're
That's
like,
nuts.
again, we're thinking about the stunts they had, the
Yeah.
like coordination, the costume. I mean, the turnaround on the show was just absolutely phenomenal. But I think again that Kismet is they had the right team. They had
Mhm.
all these people who really believed in the vision they were doing and treated it with the utmost professionalism.
And the right dog.
Yeah, they had the right dog because they talk about how they looked at tons and tons of dogs. And then like they found Soccer, who was the Jack Russell Terrier, and he was like, that's the one. And the trainer talked about like when they were showing the tour that she had been training Soccer for 7 years and like he hadn't really had any breaks or anything. Like he was just that was like her first time after years of like doing that business of having that kind of
Oh,
success. And so it was really just a beautiful, beautiful like kismet moment. I think everything that could have gone right in terms to make it happen happened. I'm just sad that the overarching powers that be couldn't make that end like that happen
right.
and it couldn't things couldn't be adapted for Wishbone to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I wish it was still on today, honestly. I also was very
Same.
shocked that it was only one dog. I kept thinking it was more than one dog. I was crazily shocked that it was one dog. It was
I
very cool.
do remember they do have some like dog doubles that would come in if they needed like a stand-in. But for
Yeah.
the most part, it was Soccer doing all of it. But like they had some dog doubles for a couple of things. Like I
And
think
a
it's the
little,
Robin Hood episode. Like they needed a couple of
yeah.
extra because there was so much happening.
Yeah, Robin Hood episode, really good.
So I think we're gonna leave it there because we have an exciting bit of our Patreon where we're gonna deep dive our favorite episodes and we're gonna wrap it
Yep.
up. But it has been such a joy to talk Wishbone and revisit that episode today. Brought me so much joy. Just waves and waves of nostalgia. Made me teary. I felt that this was a passion project by many people, and I felt that passion. And then I also was like, yeah,
Yeah,
but that's my passion. You guys ignited my passion for and
I
I
know.
don't think we'd have our podcast today if we also hadn't watched Wishbone, truthfully.
No, it definitely, yeah, it definitely led me. It's so funny because I think about how long I wanted to be a writer, and Wishbone really did ignite that. Like, I want to tell stories,
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
me. And I remember the other thing too that I remember so much about Wishbone is how it was something that tied us together.
Mhm.
I remember coming to your house and watching it. I remember us talking about it. So it really was just this really special thing. So We miss you, Wishbone. So yeah, so I would say we're gonna put the links in our show notes. I'm gonna try and find some of the YouTube links and things like that. Please go watch the documentary because I think they need our love and support. We want them to know how much we love Wishbone. So go check out the documentary. Show your kids Wishbone. It's incredible. And yeah, and please come follow us on Instagram. Come visit our Patreon. We are going to have a special after the episode bit for our Patreon. So if you want to hear more Wishbone, be sure to head there and let us know what your favorite Wishbone episode was. We'd love to hear if you actually watch Wishbone, if you're one of us. And yeah. Oh my gosh, what's the story, Wishbone?
What's the story, Wishbone? Did you read it in a book?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I
Oh, the
randomly
theme song.
sing that at random times.
Yeah, the little dog like going across the screen. I just remember it. Literally in the documentary when they started playing the theme song, I started crying. Like I was like, oh my childhood. Like it just all came rushing back. I love that so much.
This and Toy Story this week. I'm not well. I'm unwell.
Oh God, Toy Story. Yeah. Hey, ambitious readers, before you go, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Bookish Ambitions Podcast. And if you haven't joined our Patreon, what are you waiting for? Jump on over. It's where we have our book club and our bonus after the podcast episodes. So be sure to check it out. Thank you so much for supporting our podcast. Be sure to share, like, and review, and we'll be back next week with another episode.